we needed more people to speak up. And until we have more heroes than cowards in this nation, we are quickly going to find ourselves back there. I mean, I keep saying this, we're in a high-speed wobble right now. Like, what happens if Governor Newsom gets elected in 4 years? What is he going to weaponize the DOJ like? What's that going to look like? You'll probably be arrested. You're going to have HRT kicking in your door, and they probably won't, they'll be like, they probably won't care to put handcuffs on you, right? So that's what I'm saying. I need Americans and patriots need to stand up. Christians need to stand up. And we need to stand in truth.
All interviewers have their own style, and my style is to try to get to the point and to be intensely curious. And the key to interviewing is listening.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth, because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Sunday Sit Down. Today's going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. We brought a guest into the studio, which is something that I'm not always interested in doing, but this guy is pretty cleared. You're going to bring somebody around your family, you want to make sure it's the right guy, and Mark Ibrahim is that guy. He's a former DEA agent. He was a J6er. He recently got a new lease on life, but times are still tough. We are going down the same rabbit hole that we've been going on. Stuart Rhodes, Joe Biggs, and now Mark. I'm going to talk to him in just 1 second. Before we do, it's always a good time to talk about preparedness. You got to ask yourself, how well are you sleeping at night? Real peace of mind comes from knowing that your family is prepared for everything: food, water, ammunition, right? All the things. MyPatriot Supply is America's most trusted name in emergency preparedness, and they do have a limited discount right now on the 3-month emergency food kit, the same one that we have here at the Seraphin household. It's not your typical survival food. Each kit's going to give you 2,000 calories and 100% of the recommended value for 12 essential vitamins and minerals, 90 days worth of fighting energy, all kinds of different types of foods, so you're not stuck eating the same boring thing: chicken, beef, fruits, vegetables, mixing it up. Foods that last up to 25 years in storage. That's not a bad deal. The pandemic did teach us how quickly store shelves can empty out. Don't wait for a next crisis. You don't want to be caught unawares. It's better to be a year early than to be 1 day late. And your 3-month emergency food kit includes free shipping. It's got a disaster replacement warranty and 24/7 US-based customer support. Use this special discount right now. It's going to be $100 off. Going to preparelikekyle.com. You see it on the screen. Preparelikekyle.com. Secure your family's future with $100 off this 3-month emergency food kit. If you order by 3 p.m., they will ship your order the same business day, so you'll have peace of mind right away. Go to preparelikekyle.com. Easy to see, easy to remember. Check them out, and they are an annual sponsor here, so we're really appreciative that they stick around with us. And in the good times and the bad, you want to make sure you got something in your pantry. Nothing worse. All right, we're going to dive right into this conversation with Mark Ibrahim, again, brought to you by the good folks at MyPatriot Supply. So here we go. My guest today in studio. We're making a rare exception to try to do this live. It's Mark Ibrahim, and he's going to tell you some wild story. In addition to looking like a Mexican gardener who just snuck in here, did they pick you up at Home Depot on the way, my friend?
My name's Juan.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew this. It was the vanity. It was going to come out. It was going to come out right away. So, buddy, you got a wild story. I don't think a lot of people know it. I think that you found yourself in a space where you had to kind of keep it on the DL for a bit. Why don't you tell people? Let's start with where you grew up. Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah. So, my mother escaped communist Cuba, and she did 33 years of government service as a DoD civilian. She was in the Pentagon on 9/11. Went back the next day in high heels to give those terrorists what they deserve. And she instilled in all of us that we have a debt to this country and that freedom isn't free. And so my brother, who's a current FBI agent now, my sister joined the Navy. She was an ensign, SWO. My brother went Army, eventually Army Special Operations, and then a federal agent. I followed my brother into the Army. I was an Army Intel officer, and my last unit was 20th Special Forces Group. And then I followed him into federal law enforcement. And instead of being an FBI agent, because I just thought they were a bunch of analysts with guns who doctor up 302s, I joined the DEA, and I I saw that fentanyl opioid pandemic was killing about 100 to 120,000 Americans, and if I really wanted to protect Americans, I'd fight, go join the premier agency to fight that with the Drug Enforcement Administration. And yeah, and so, but my father was a Coptic Orthodox Christian who fled persecution in Egypt, and he was an Air Force MiG pilot and came here and met my mom in Jersey, and the rest was history.
So you grew up in New Jersey?
No, I grew up in Florida and then Virginia. I was born in Florida and then raised in Virginia, Northern Virginia.
Let me see if you can clear something up for me. The rumor at Quantico is that all DEA trainees and all FBI trainees have one thing in common. You know what that is?
I know.
They all want to be FBI agents.
Okay.
Is that true?
All I know is we spend a lot more day on the range and on combatives than you guys do. So I'll just leave it at that.
I had a funny experience watching that. I watched the guys from the DEA jogging around. They looked bigger, fitter, stronger, more militant, and kind of doing, guidon bearing, drill and things like this, like paramilitary style stuff. And then you saw people and on my side of the Quantico base, and they were all kind of like doing like a gaggle everywhere they went, and it was kind of horrible. I
mean, I would just cruise the FBI holes looking for chicks to date. So
that was successful at some point in time.
I did, yeah. I dated a couple FBI agent females.
It's a good thing you clarify that, even though it is 2025 and we are going back to saying gay and retarded again. It doesn't mean some people are not both of those things.
Yeah.
Let's get into the story where your life goes awry, because it certainly did. How long were you with the DEA before January 6th?
I mean, if you include the academy and everything, it was just under about 2 years.
Okay.
So I was an agent first in DC, and then I got sent out to Orange County, California.
And how long were you with the military in whatever capacities?
10 years.
10 years.
10 years, yeah.
So about 12 years of military service of government service total prior to January 6th.
Yeah, and not including ROTC. Yeah, which is my real service to America.
So showing up and dealing with that. Let's talk about that day, because I know it changed your life. It probably changed your family experience in a big way. Lay it on me. Just what were you doing there? What made you show up on that day, and what was your capacity as far as official? Who were you employed by, and where, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So after I was still in the service. I was an FBI source of information or informant. I don't know, however they classified me, but I was finding terrorist cells, ISIS cells specifically in the United States and in Iraq and Syria. And while I was overseas, I ran into an FBI informant named Jorge Calzadilla, who was, we were in Iraq together, and then he's Cuban, and we became friends. And, he suffered from PTSD and a couple other things, so I was trying to help mentor him out of his depression and whatever. And so he came and lived with me, and I was just trying to help him out. But then he got, his FBI handlers reached out to him and got him doing a bunch of white supremacy, militia group type work. And they sent him out to Clive and Bundy standoff, a bunch of militia standoffs. And he was the one who told me initially about J6. And he was like, "Hey, Mark, I'm going to J6. Would you mind picking me up from the airport and taking me there?" He knew that I was armed and I could protect him and all that jazz. So I told my brother about it, who is an active, credentialed FBI agent at the time. And so me, a DEA credentialed agent, my brother, who is a credentialed FBI agent, and this FBI informant all went to the J6 rally. I asked him, "Are you working?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Well, show me the text message from your handler, like the tasking, if you will." And he showed me it, and I was like, "Okay." He said, "Collect as much information as you can, be safe." And I said, "Okay, that's good enough for me." And so we walked around, and we got there, and if I saw anything violent against officers, I would have absolutely acted. I mean, you come after my brothers in blue, like I'll come after you. And so obviously I never saw anything, otherwise I would have arrested somebody. And he said, "Mark, I'm going to go in the building." And I said, "If you go in that building, I'm going to arrest you or leave you here." It's like you drive someone to the bank, like, "I'll be right back, I'm going to rob the bank." It's like, no, like being a federal agent, I was like, "I'm going to arrest you if you go in that building, and I'm definitely not going to be here if you go in that building." And so he got angry, and he did eventually go in that building. I found out years later through some video I was like, oh crap, that's Jorge. But anyways, and he got angry, sold a story to Reuters for like $100,000 about a gun-toting DEA agent in the crowd, and you know, he tried to extort me too. I mean, it's insane. The absolute insanity of the story. You know, I linked up with the WFO SWAT team, the FBI's Washington field office SWAT team out there.
Mhm.
I was tight with a lot of these dudes. I trained with some of them. Some of them were at my graduation from the DEA Academy, and they were out there and they were all masked up and kitted up. And I could recognize them from their tactical numbers and on their patches and everything. And good friends, their team medic and sniper, a very close friend of mine. My son's actually named after him. And good brother, and he walked up and I was like, hey man, any way I can assist you, anything I can do. They had their Bearcat out there or their tactical vehicle, and I said, I'll watch your vehicle. If you need me to go on a stack, anything I can do to help you, let me know. We're here. And some people were hackling them and be like, who do you defend, and you guys aren't patriots and blah blah. And I was like, these guys are real Americans, they're patriots. And they were there and you know, in uniform. They weren't plain clothes trying to rile up the crowd or anything. And they were the ones who eventually shut down the Capitol building because Capitol Police lost their heads after opening the doors and letting everybody in. The FBI SWAT team went in there and shut the show down. And so they are American heroes, man. And it's a shame that there weren't more whistleblowers. It's a shame that there weren't more brave agents to speak up about the BS that they saw that day. But anyway, so Jorge sold the story to Reuters. Reuters ran the story. The DEA basically suspended me 3 times for my role in January 6th and then fired me for performance issues because they thought they were being cute and they wouldn't violate my First Amendment right by firing me for being at January 6th. So that's a wrong that needs to be righted.
Were you on leave on that day?
Yes. Yeah, I was on leave.
So you're allowed to do whatever you want on your own time, yeah?
Absolutely. But there's this weird little thing of people say off-duty agent. Agents aren't off-duty. You're either assigned a job, but you're always an agent. That's why you fly armed if you're on vacation. You still fly armed. If there's a felony or a violent crime happening in front of you, you're still expected to act. We can be held criminally if we don't operate in a certain way, right? And so there's no thing they're like off-duty special agent was there. It's like I'm always a special agent. I'm always a credentialed agent. I always have arrest authority. I always am allowed to carry my gun. You know, and so it was just so anyways, they ran that article. The DEA knew who I was, and so they didn't fire me immediately. They tried to keep me on. They were like, as long as you didn't go in the building or hurt anybody, you're good. And I was like, I'm not a criminal. I would never do anything like that. And so then I guess it just the narrative with the administration and everything, and they ended up firing me. I went on Tucker Carlson and basically said it's a shame I lost my job. I love my country. I've been blown up multiple times. I have multiple TBIs from my service in this nation. And then after I went on Tucker and spoke up, that's when they indicted me and they gag ordered me with my discovery and all this stuff. And they're like, you can't talk about this and that. And I was facing 16 years in prison. Main reason why I didn't take a plea deal was because there's a terrorist enhancement. After everything I've done in Iraq and everything I've done for my country, and my mom being in the Pentagon on 9/11, and the legacy of my siblings serving in the military and federal law enforcement, and then now I'm a terrorist allegedly, and so I was like, no, not doing that. And thank God thank God Trump made, promises kept. And I was actually going to go to trial January 23rd. And I was going to be convicted on January 23rd because I've sent so many motions and I knew how the judge was going to respond. And so anyways, the judge signed the dismissal on January 22nd at like 7 p.m. So God's rarely early, but he's always on time.
This is literally the day before or the night before?
The night before. Yeah, I was like within 10 hours of going to trial and being convicted. And it's crazy because I fought this tooth and nail. I appealed it all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court wouldn't hear it. I found in the code section of the Capitol Police traffic code is like all duly appointed federal agents are allowed to carry their weapons on Capitol grounds. And the judge was like, when in performance of their duties, and threw that away. And then he made my crime a strict liability crime, and he compared me to an individual with a hand grenade. So he literally compared a terrorist with a hand grenade to a federal agent carrying his firearm. And I was, and I never went in the building. I never hurt anybody. I offered assistance to the FBI. And this is just where this narrative, it's so evil. There's no other word for it other than it's evil. Like Jason R. Higley, a DOJ IG special agent, talked to the FBI SWAT team that day. My buddy, who's named after my kid, and he was like, were you threatened by Mark's presence? Did Mark, like, he's like, nah, man, Mark's good to go. He assisted us. People were yelling at us. He offered assistance. We have his personal cell phone number. Mark's a great guy. And he was like, okay, like, that doesn't fit my narrative. Mark's a domestic terrorist and white supremacist, even though I'm Egyptian Cuban and like I'm too confused to be a racist. Like I'm like Egypt's in Africa. I'm Latino. I don't even know what I look whitish, but no, that was the thing. White supremacist police, white supremacist, like tries to kill Nancy Pelosi, blah blah. It's like is absolute insanity. But everybody was convinced, from the arresting agent to Merrick Garland, to the judges, to everybody. There was nobody who was like looking at this and it's like, why is the FBI doing no-knock raids on nonviolent misdemeanors? And Steve Friend, like your buddy, he's like a hero of mine. I mean, you're a personal hero of mine, because that's where I'm saying, like, where are American heroes? Like, where was like the SEAL Team 6 guys, the FBI agent, like HRT? Where were the CAG guys who were speaking up against all the BS that happened while we were losing our democracy? And like, you're a hero of mine, brother. Like, I respect you a lot, because you didn't put pension over principle. You're like, this is wrong and America needs to know about it. And God bless you for it, man. And I know God rewards those who diligently seek him, and you were seeking truth. And so honestly, man, I'm proud to be here today. So
we're happy to have you in. I'm kind of more concerned. I've always been concerned about the part of your story where people knew you in my old office, like people that we probably know in common. I spent a lot of time with the SWAT team working as an adjunct medic. So I jump in with their vehicle convoys and go do search warrants and whatnot. So people that we know in common knew that you weren't a problem. And yet they were fine with it. Let's get to the real heart of it. Your brother.
Yeah.
Can we talk about what, like,
yeah, so
look,
my brother,
January 6th was kind of almost like a Civil War moment in a lot of ways, that people divided, like households divided over their interpretation of it, in the same way that we look back at 1861 and see, Americans pick sides. And I feel like that happened.
I keep saying this, that the FBI agent is just filled with Nazis who are just following orders. They're just guys just doing their job. And they try to shame us and say our reputations were bad and this and that. And it's like, it's just tragic that there weren't more moral, brave federal agents who spoke up against the injustices that were occurring under the Biden administration. And my brother was a credentialed FBI counterterrorism agent. And when the DOJ released all these photos of me and J6, they blacked out my brother's face. And which meant to me either he was working or something was going on that I wasn't privileged to. Mm-hmm. And there's no other, like, I've literally watched hundreds of thousands of hours of a lot of hours of J6 videos and pictures and Discovery, and I've never seen anyone's face blacked out. And my brother's face was blacked out. My brother wasn't offered a plea deal. My brother wasn't offered a cooperation deal. My brother wasn't reprimanded for being there. And then he went on to go investigate other J6ers. And so it's like, and I'm not hating on my brother. I just think it's what plagues the federal law enforcement agencies. It's pension over principle. I'm not losing my job over this. And I'm just going to do what I'm told, even though I know what I'm doing is wrong. I'm going to throw a flashbang into a little girl's room who I know that the dad inside is a patriot and is wanted on a non-violent misdemeanor. Like that's evil. That is evil. These guys get to play dress up they get to put on their cool guy gear and their Mitch helmets, and they get their, and they get to call people out, and they get all excited about their little raids. But you were raiding American Patriot homes. You guys are cowards. And like, I have a friend who his daughter got a flashbang, and like Derek Kennison, this is the kind of BS that people don't know about. Derek Kennison's I met him through this. It was on a group chat. Never went into the building, and only offered medical aid he offered medical aid to everybody who was hurting, like from CS gas or whatever. And he offered it to police officers. He offered to civilians. He was part of a group chat. I guess maybe an informant or an agent or somebody was saying stupid things in a group chat. He was like, you probably shouldn't say these things, and left the group chat. He was convicted on conspiracy to sedition and for destruction of evidence when he left the group chat. And he was like sentenced to like 8 years in prison, which he served 9 months in 1 day. And of those 9 months in 1 day, he was moved around 6 times to different prisons. And I mean, it was like, it's a shame that this is happening in the United States of America. And there's very few agents who actually spoke up against this. And it was evil, and it was a weaponization of our Department of Justice, and which is supposed to be bipartisan and completely subjective. And it was just awful. I mean, it's just a sad day in American history. Like, people don't really understand the evil that occurred and how many constitutional rights and were taken that throughout the J6, pandemic, if you will. So
I want to step back a little bit. I want you to think about your time in training. I think about the people that you dealt with in the military. I want you to think about the people that you would respect, whether it be Washington Field SWAT, whether it be other agents you work with at DEA. Could we have predicted, do you think, how many people, what percentage of people would not take the difficult, correct path? I think it's the correct path, so I'm going to call it that. And was there any indicators that would be the case? And if you had to guess before, let's say 2020, how many people that were your colleagues would do the right thing? And then what do you estimate that percentages looks like right now? Just a complicated kind of look at this.
There's a saying like "Long live the brotherhood," man, and it's not "Long live the brotherhood." It's "Long live the brand." People just care about their little careers, and what people don't realize that the things that we do in our career has immense effect on other people. Like Jason R. Higley interviewed the FBI SWAT team. Like, they were like, Mark is good to go. He was offered us assistance that day. We were not threatened by his presence. And he's like, okay, like, that doesn't fit my narrative. I need to fit my narrative. And so it's just, and it happens. Like, I have a very good friend who, was serving on the SEAL teams, and great guy. And he was a Trump appointee and got attacked because he was a Trump appointee. And they just came after him really hard. This is nothing new. The weaponization of the DOJ. I mean, it's a problem because it's based on stats, and it's based on career progression. It's like, why is me throwing a person in jail for the rest of his life gonna bump me up? Like, why is that my motivation to make like GS-14? You know what I mean? Like, it's a broken system, and it's not innocent until proven guilty. It's like guilty and then until they crack, or until the system is designed to deplete you emotionally, financially, and they have unlimited resources. They can take years to prosecute you. I mean, look at Trump. Trump's a felon, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's just all take a step back for a second and realize the president of the United States is a felon. And he's convicted of what, 54 felonies or something like that?
Yeah, a bunch.
That's how evil and corrupt. And meanwhile, Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein were like doing whatever. Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker all took a plane throughout Africa for like a couple of weeks. Epstein was in the Clinton White House multiple times, seen with bringing in girls. But it's just a sad state of affairs.
Died unconvicted.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, but it's and that's why, like, God willing, Trump can fix this. Kash Patel can fix this. I am hopeful for America. Patriots and Republicans have saved the Republic once before, and we can do it again. I mean, you think back to Valley Forge and the Civil War and how close we were to losing our nation. I think we were very close to losing our nation. I mean, inches from Trump almost being killed. And that's the other thing. They tried to kill our president. It's like we're reading a Tom Clancy novel. I mean, and they were all in BlackRock videos, like in commercials. It's like, it's a weird little world we live in. And unless there are more heroes than cowards, we're going to stay here. You know, unless there are more people who are based on morality and principle versus their pension, unless these politicians aren't just like, you know, people say politics is Hollywood for ugly people.
Mm-hmm.
But like, unless these politicians are real people who care about their constituents and just not for show, we're going to find ourselves in a sticky situation again. And God forbid that. But I love America. I love the Constitution. I love my rights. I'm allowed to have guns again. Praise God. And, you know, and it's a sad state of affairs. And I pray we never go back there.
Let's talk about the personal cost, if you don't mind, because let's start with the suspensions and let's move forward with some of the cost.
Yeah. So, well, first off, I'm a DEA agent, was a DEA agent facing 16 years in prison. The cartels run the prisons, and me going to jail would have been a death sentence. Very clearly, it would have been very bad. Let's just put it that way. And so there was that hanging over my head. I had a newborn son during this time, and the fear of every time I picked up my son, it was like this joyous, beautiful thing. And I was, being a father is the greatest thing I've ever achieved and am, and I'm thankful to God for my beautiful baby boy. But it was also really depressing because like I may not get to see him grow up, and I may not get to see him become a man. I may not be there for his first steps. I may not, you know, be there for his first words. Maybe another man is going to be raising my son. And that was really hard. Like that's the real evil about this thing. Like they took something so pure of being a father and it was tainted because of this. And that's just a mental and emotional and physical cost. I've really, you know, I was in a really bad mental state, and Pastor Rob McCoy met me, saw the depression and hurt in my face, my eyes, and he said, "You come work for me." And he just poured love and preached the gospel to me and encouraged me. And he kept saying, "Mark, you cross that river when we get there. You cross that river when you get there." And he just kept me, put your hope in the Lord. Put your hope in the Lord. God will deliver you. And he did, you know, at the midnight hour. God did, man. But as far as that financially, I mean, my first attorney was, I think all in all, between all my attorneys and all my expenses and not being able to work, I personally have lost around $300,000. And I'm not a rich person. I mean, there were some donations that were made graciously, and they went to attorney fees. But yeah, I mean, I've lost around $300,000. I still have around a $50,000 bill with my attorney. There are some very nice people in Idaho that donated like $7,000 to help me cover my attorney fees, which is very gracious of them. But yeah, I still need to pay my attorneys. I maxed out my credit cards, just trying to survive and be a provider for my family and not being able to work. And so, but you know, I mean, God has always provided for me. And this is the one thing it's just not like a spiritual thing I've learned is faith. The opposite of faith is fear. Fear is faith in Satan. Fear is faith in Satan's outcome for your life. Fear makes you kill yourself. Fear makes you have an abortion. Fear makes you want to kill, steal, lie. Faith makes you operate in a way that God's planned for your life. Faith makes you courageous. Faith makes you trust. Faith makes you endure hardships, knowing that God will rectify the situation. And so I would just encourage anybody listening, I would root fear out of your life and realize the Bible says do not fear 365 times. It is the most repeated commandment in the Bible. It's not the greatest commandment, but it is the most repeated commandment. And I really didn't understand the dichotomy between faith and fear. But fear is satanic worship. Fear is living in the devil's reality for your life, and faith will make you live in God's reality for your life. So I would encourage you to always choose faith over fear, and to be brave and stay strong in God's word. That he says all things work for those who love God and are called to his purpose. And like, I had a good friend at CIA. He told me who led the Israelites into the Red Sea. And I said, I don't know, man. God, a pillar of cloud and fire at night. I don't know. What are you getting at, man? And he was like, God led the Israelites to the Red Sea, where there was a genocidal army behind them and a sea of abyss in front of them, and no hopes of crossing or fighting. And God delivered them in a way that only he could do it. And so his glory would be shown, and that people would put their trust in him always. And so I'm a big believer of utter dependence on the Lord, and always just trusting in him. And God delivered me and saved me in more ways than one. So, yeah. But I wouldn't have gotten here if it wasn't for the love of Pastor Rob McCoy. I mean, he, I was charged with, the greatest way to discredit anybody is charge you with a false statement, right? And that was the other thing. I couldn't lie about lying, so I couldn't take the plea deal. That charge got dismissed. And which is crazy. Like, very few J6 charges got dismissed.
What did they say you said falsely?
I said I never brandished my weapon. That's why I said I never brandished my weapon. They're like, here's a photo of it concealed in your belt line with your badge. And I go, okay, like, brandishing to me is you pull your gun out and you're like, this is brandishing, right? My gun was never unholstered, and it was inside the waistband was my holster. And so they said, and the other thing is, in order to be charged with false statement, it has to be material to the crime, right? So if I'm investigating you and I say, are you gay? And he's like, nope. And then I find whatever on your phone. We've all been through your phone, Kyle.
Ooh, mine. Interesting.
But no, but it's like, okay, you lied to me about being gay. Well, it's not a crime to be gay, so you can't be charged with making a false statement. It is not a crime for me to have my gun on me. It's not a crime for my gun to be exposed, period.
I just looked up brandish, by the way. Just a quick dictionary check here. Gerund, present participle, is brandishing. Wave or flourish something, especially a weapon, as a threat or in anger or excitement.
Yeah. So,
showing your waistband is the opposite of brandishing to everybody that knows what brandishing is.
Right. And if you walk past a police officer with an inside the waistband pistol, that's considered concealed carry. Right. And so and again, it's not even illegal. Even if I said my gun was never showing. Okay, it's not illegal for my gun to be showing. I'm a federal agent. We always take the stupid pictures like, oh, look at me with the drugs. Well, look at me with this. And,
yeah, let me get even dumber about that. My first experience working with the Washington Field surveillance team was a guy whose name will go unsaid, but he knows who he is. I met him at the airport. So we're now within the security cordon where nobody's allowed to have a weapon except federal agents. And I'd never met him before. And I knew that he was on my team going to Alaska in June of 2018 because I saw his weapon exposed because his shirt had come untucked and was sitting on top of his gun. So his gun is sitting there and he's in the airport lobby waiting to get on the plane, like outside the gate. And I walked up and I said, hey buddy, your weapon's exposed. And he was like, ugh. And he like covered it up. And he was disgruntled about it. And then I found out later on, he's just kind of a disgruntled guy sometimes. That's just the nature of his personality. But that wasn't brandishing. And it is a violation of FBI policy to actually have your gun exposed in that circumstances. But like, no one's going to do anything about it. There's nothing to do. It's certainly not a crime. It's bad OPSEC to reveal that you're carrying a weapon before you go on a plane, because what it says is that's the federal agent. And if I had a problem, that's the guy I got to take out first. That's the only real issue and danger there.
Right. So again, it's not illegal for my gun to be exposed. We do raids where we open carry and holsters and tactical holsters and ARs and all this stuff. Like, we're allowed to have our weapons concealed and exposed. It is not a material crime. So it could never be charged with, and then he even lied about it and said, I was in DC when I lied and it was a Zoom call. And so the judge was like, this is, thank God, like the judge was like, this is BS, and dismissed it. But but again, they started off with this guy, false statements, and Pastor Rob didn't know anything about me, just all what the left had said. I'm violent, I'm dangerous, white supremacist. And I lied to the FBI about my role in January 6th. That's what all the articles are about me. And And so, you know, and then Rob took a chance on me, and he said, I don't care about any of that. I love you as a brother in Christ, and he encouraged me, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. So, I mean, there are a lot of patriots and a lot of good people who stood the ground. Pastor Rob McCoy, by the way, was the mayor of Thousand Oaks, California, and the pastor of Godspeed Calvary Chapel. And when Governor Newsom said he said that the churches were non-essential, he resigned from being the mayor, which is a very prestigious role, and he kept his church open. And he faced being arrested, he faced fines and fees, he faced forfeiture of the church building, and he stayed open. You know, and that's why I'm.
Was that the case that Jenna Ellis got involved in? Does that sound right?
I don't know. I mean, I know that Pastor Rob was the first pastor to keep his church open, and many other patriot-minded pastors followed his suit. And you know, he saw my article on you know, my news story on Tucker Carlson, and it's like, man, they got to this guy, and you know, and that's the thing. Like I said, that there was a federal agent and federal informants in the crowd 3 years ago. Now it's common knowledge. They still don't say how many FBI agents were in the crowd, my brother being one of them, and the FBI SWAT team being one of them. And that's the other thing people just don't understand. Like, if the FBI SWAT team was mobilized and placed out beside the Capitol building, what was the intel for them to do that? Right? Like, you don't just mobilize a SWAT team. It costs a lot of money to do that. What was the intelligence behind them going out there?
What does the DEA have specific programs called UC programs where you have to go get a credential, certificate, schooling, and so on to become a undercover, or does everybody do that?
I think everybody does it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so DEA very different in that way than FBI. A lot of FBI agents are not undercovers; they're not authorized to operate "quote unquote" undercover. But there's also no uniform, as you well know from your brother. There's no uniform for an FBI agent.
Right.
So if your brother's out in the crowd, he's not a UC. He's not operating undercover. He's just an FBI agent who's wearing his clothes,
Right.
which is what FBI agents do every day.
And I truthfully think that my brother just texted his ASAC or he was texting other FBI agents in the crowd, and he was like, hey, I'm here. And they were like, yeah, collect or look around and be safe or whatever. And that was their tasking, I guess. I mean, people don't understand how federal law enforcement works, right? If you
Agreed.
text your ASAC, hey, I'm here, I see this, and they respond, okay, be safe, collect information, like do your job, whatever. That's your tasking now. Like you're assigned to that now. Or there's no on or off duty with federal agents. That's why we fly armed all the time. You know, and that's why if a crime happens in front of us, we're expected to handle it and operate, you know, in the function that we're trained to. But yeah, I don't know.
It's just, yeah, I think it comes from that fundamental lack of understanding. It's the same understanding issues we've had with people in the public who are trying to talk about how the FBI was trying to serve a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago and they were authorized deadly force to go kill. It's like deadly force authorization happens the minute you get your gun, forever, until you lose the gun. And then you get to have your own. Like, I have a deadly force policy. Like, no one wrote it down and no one made me remember it. But it's the same one I operated under, the constitutional abilities that I have in the state law in Texas. I carry a weapon and I'm authorized to use it when it's authorized, as long as I fulfill a lawful defense, as long as I'm doing it in defense of my life or others. So it's just these lack of understandings end up creeping in, and we get the wrong voices out talking about it. I want to move to the right voice version of it, though. Let's talk about, did you always have this trust, this faith? Because I feel like I've talked to you over the last, maybe 2 years? Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the last 2 years, highs and lows, would that be fair?
Yeah, it's an understatement.
Yeah, some like feeling like it's going to work out, and probably some abysmal moments like I'm going to go to prison and I'm going to die there, and I heard some conversations like that. Did you, and you know, talk about the faith aspect and whether that was something you knew before January 6th of 2021?
Well, I'll talk about like just the highs and lows real quick. There were times where I was like, surely they can't throw me in jail. Like, surely somebody's going to see, like, they're going to talk to the FBI, the SWAT team. Surely they're going to talk to my brother. Surely they're going to see my criminal record, which is nothing. Surely they're going to see my service history. Surely someone's going to not throw me in jail. And then it went to like clearly seeing how Jason R. Higley, the DOJ, IG, and special agent, I use that term sparingly, would just ignore all the good things that I've done, ignore my history, ignore my time finding ISIS terrorists inside the United States, ignore the conversations and assistance I offered the WFO SWAT team that day just to fulfill this narrative. And then I was like, well, surely the judge is going to see through this bullshit. And then the judge compared me to a guy, a strict liability crime, and compared me to a dude carrying a hand grenade. And it's like,
I think what happened is they were like, look, we've looked into all that and stopped calling us Shirley. Is that possible?
yeah, dude, it's exactly.
It's hard to see that.
My faith in the government, like, seriously declined. And then it opened my eyes because I was a true believer. I was like, I want to be a federal law enforcement. Like, these guys are my heroes. I love, like, you see the movies and you're like, I want to be a special agent one day, not realizing that these people are like just evil bureaucrats that are just trying to get convictions. Now, granted, there are some good things like stopping child pornography and stopping sex trafficking, like, but the majority of agents are just being thrown into these political arenas, and you see it with Trump. Like, who are the agents that investigated Trump?
I know them.
Yeah.
I mean, I know them.
Yeah. I mean,
they're not bad people, by the way. They're really not.
They're Nazis doing their job.
Yeah.
And I would say they are bad people, because you cannot say I'm just following orders while I'm bringing Jews to their deaths. And you're like, I'm still a good person. I have a moral distance because I'm just following orders. I was told to do this. Well,
flesh that logic out, because you just jumped into something that was the argument during COVID that I made, obviously, about something very different. I didn't necessarily see the same thing for January 6th, but I'm very open to hearing your line of thinking on that.
On what, COVID? Or...
No, you called them Nazis right out the gate. So let's
man, we're all men.
Flesh that out.
Okay, we're all men. We all are here put on this earth, regardless of a badge or a gun or authority. Like, we all have a moral obligation to our fellow man, and we are Americans. And like, you tell me, like, that's why Steve Friend is one of my heroes. It's like, yeah, you're a cool guy, FBI SWAT team dude, and it's like, this guy has a nonviolent misdemeanor. Let's throw some flashbangs into his kid's room, and it's like, hell yeah, and just boom, and then like, let's kick in his door and scare his children half to death, and it's like, he was like, I can't. All he said is like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is evil. This is wrong. We all have it before. We have an obligation to God and to our fellow man before we have an obligation to the FBI or whatever. And if you know, in the military, if you're given an unlawful order, you don't have to obey it, right?
Did you get any training on that at the ATF? I'm sorry, at the DEA. Sorry, I'm blanking.
What do you mean, like following unlawful orders?
Yeah, did you get unlawful order training?
No.
I don't think that I ever did either. I'm just trying to reflect back on it. I know I did in the military, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's standard. And you get the same thing when you go through SEER training. You know what is and what is not allowed, and like what is and what isn't crossing the line. They teach you how to discredit things if you have no other choice. So there may be some things that you have to do in order to stay alive and maintain life, which is what they call it. I got a little coin on the back of the wall over here that's got that on there. You have to maintain life, but it's your duty to discredit the action if the action is not something that you would otherwise be lawfully able to do. But I don't remember that when I was at the FBI, and I'm not sure that any federal law enforcement is teaching lawful orders.
You're told to follow orders, and you know, and it's quite tragic that, you know, and this is the sad part to me, is there, I mean, how many FBI whistleblowers are there? How many federal agents spoke up against this past Department of Injustice?
I've been told it's in the dozens, but
I only know of like 5.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay,
I know about a half dozen.
How many federal agents are there between the ATF, all of DEA, FBI, Border Patrol? I would say there's around 100,000 federal agents between all the agencies.
I don't think it's that high. I think the FBI has the biggest bite of it, and it's 14,000. And then I think behind that, what does DEA got? 3,000?
Right, but if you consider ATF and
it's a couple thousand here and there. It's probably like in the 30s, maybe the 40s. It's a lot of people.
I mean, CBP. Anyways, it's a lot of people.
Okay, CBP, kind of different animal. They're differently branded.
Anybody who went through FLETC, right?
Okay.
How many? I would say the number of people who went through FLETC is probably 50 to 100,000 people, and 5 people that I know have stood up and spoke up against the injustices. Right.
My buddy Rob Green calls it institution over constitution is the default.
Correct.
We saw the same thing in DOD. We saw a lot of commanders that knew what was right, felt it deeply in their hearts, that are good people, or at least had previously been good people. I had this moment. I think it was Stuart Rhodes that brought this to my attention. He said the question that he asked people is, does the moment make the man, or does the moment reveal the man? So I'll ask you, does the moment make or reveal the man?
I think moment reveals a man. I think absolutely. I mean, you are who you are, and when you get put in a tough situation, it's going to bring out the worst or best qualities of who you are. And I was just very thankful that I had a bunch of patriots and God-fearing men rally behind me. I actually remember there's a guy named Tony. He owns Basilico's Pasta e Vino in Orange County, and he refused to shut down his restaurant because it was made in memory of his mother.
Okay.
So when they tried, like California, Governor Newsom tried to shut him down while keeping all of his pastry shops open, he's like, no, like F you. Like, this is my mother. Now, Tony and I may or may have not have been on opposite sides of the law at some points. And but Tony's a real American patriot who loves this country and refused to shut down his Italian restaurant in his mother's memory. And I remember coming in there after my was offered my plea deal, and my attorney at the time said, you should take it. And I was like, I was just so desperate. I wanted this to be done. I'm in debt. I'm like $150,000 in debt. It just started, and I was just so. And he goes, Mark, I can't tell you what to do, and I can't judge you if you take a plea deal, but F them. F them. Stand your ground. You know you're in the truth. You know you're in the right. Like, die in the truth instead of living in, it's just being on your knees in a lie. And that's, he gave me really encouragement at a time when I didn't know where to go. And Rob McCoy said, Mark, you can't lie about lying. You need to be firm in your truth. Fight this to the end. And so I was thankful that I had sound counsel, and now I'm not a convicted felon. I'm not anything. It was just dismissed. But you Google me and you see all the left articles about me, and, they just made up a bunch of crazy stuff. And so, but I'm very thankful that a bunch of patriots rallied behind me and encouraged me to fight the good fight and to stand for truth. And I rather would have died in the truth than lived in a lie. And that's the other thing that people don't understand. A truth isn't afraid of the lie, but a lie is afraid of the truth. And you don't have to defend the truth. You just have to let it out, and it'll defend itself like a lion. And so it's like, everybody knows the vaccine was a sham, and it was dangerous, and it was killing people, and it was an experimental drug. And I literally was, because I was in the DEA when they were telling us to get vaccinated and everything. And I was literally thinking about it, and I was like, okay, it doesn't stop me from getting COVID. It doesn't stop me from giving COVID. You're not going to tell me what's in it, and I can't sue you if it hurts me. And, oh, by the way, if I don't get it, you're going to fire me.
Oh, and by the way, now we're going to make moral judgments on you.
Right. You are a human POS if you don't get vaccinated, because and.
Did you have the same instinct that I do, which is that when you want me to do something that badly, like, I instinctively just don't want to do it. Like, I just...
Dude, honestly, my heart just first went to my mom, right? I was like, my mom is like a diabetic elderly woman who survived 9/11 and served this country and survived communism. I was like, look, if it will stop me from giving COVID to my mother, even if it has a negative side effect on me, sure, I'll take that sacrifice. Like, I will take that hit as long as it stops me from giving COVID to my mother. And then it was like, doesn't stop it from stopping the spread. So I was like, then what's the point? There is no logical point to getting vaccinated if it doesn't stop the spread. It doesn't stop you from getting it. It doesn't stop you from giving it. Even if it's like, okay, like, you'll still get COVID. You'll still be messed up from COVID, but it'll stop me from giving it to my mother in a heartbeat. I get 5 vaccines. I don't care, as long as it makes my mother safer. But it doesn't. So what's the point?
It seemed like the worst sell job that I've ever seen. And then you had weirdos like Bill de Blasio out there who was like eating French fries. He's like, you mean I get these delicious French fries?
Yeah, Krispy Kreme donuts.
And you're going like, what in the hell? What kind of like single order level thinking people were being marketed to?
And people aren't talking about the miscarriage rates like up 3,000%. I know family members who've had multiple miscarriages.
I do too.
Are suffering because they were vaccinated.
Yeah.
And it's proven they've died of fetal myocarditis.
Yeah, and I can't draw the direct line because I don't have the data and it's not my business to. I just see the anecdotal evidence, which is that some people really suffered, and there should be some more questions than what we got. And historically, people used to pull this kind of stuff. Anyway, I feel like I think Americans are stubborn the way that all of us are. I think you're probably stubborn. I'm probably stubborn the same way. And the thought is like, if God gives you one challenge, maybe that's not enough. But you had a lot of challenges come your way. I feel like I had a lot of challenges come my way. And I feel like it wasn't like we just put you into a decision to whether or not you're going to play this hand. It was like, are you going to be at the table and are you willing to bet your life? And a couple of people stood up and went all in.
Well, honestly, man, when I was rolling around in Iraq and rounds were impacting close by me, and I'm not war stories and this and that, I didn't walk around fearful of losing my life. I was like, I just got to do my job. I was too busy to be afraid, kind of. I mean, obviously, I was like scared shitless, but like, I was like, I'm too busy to be afraid. I got to do my job, and God will handle the rest. And I was like, I just have to do my job. And then, but when you're fighting the cartels and ISIS and criminals, it's a different story when it's Mark Ibrahim versus United States government. And it was like, oh my God, like, and then I realized that like I just had to be strong, like just put on the same mental mind frame of being in Iraq. It's like the cards fall where they fall, and like God is in control, and I trust him, and what happens, and that's it. But I'm not going to go quietly into the night. I'm not going to plea. I'm not going to just bend over and take it. I was like, if you're going to rape me, I'm at least going to be screaming about it. You know what I mean? And thank God, like, I overcame. You know, there's very few success stories. There's a lot of people that are still felons out there, and that their lives are ruined, their reputations are ruined, and they're just patriots that never went in a building, never hurt anybody. They just were caught in the crosshairs of a corrupt DOJ. And I mean, I think Trump really needs to set something up that he can help identify these people and pardon them, and help like right some wrongs of a history of corruption of the FBI and federal law enforcement.
Do you think that you could have seen this without being shown it so aggressively?
No. I mean, no. I mean, it's because, and it's always in your training. It's always in the doctrine. It's always in like, you are the good guys. They're the bad guys. F them. Like, they're the bad guys. They wouldn't be in your report if they weren't bad. They wouldn't be, there wouldn't be a 302 on them if they weren't horrible human beings. Like, so it's just I mean, even when I had drug cases, I would do background checks, obviously. And I really I'd only go after the people with the drug cases that had like some child trafficking charge or kidnapping charge or child pornography charge. Because that's honestly, that's near and dear to my heart, that I think like America really needs to crack down on. We're the largest consumers of child porn, which is sad. And, if you have child porn on your phone, you can go to jail for 10 years, but you can go down to Mexico and have sex with a child for $10 scot-free. And it's evil. And we need to stop that. So that was my litmus test. Like, and there were some drug cases that I felt bad about prosecuting because I knew the guy was like mentally impaired, and he was just being taken advantage of by the cartel. He had a U.S. citizenship. They're just, you're a childlike mind. Like, just go drive these drugs across the border. And it was really hard for me to really prosecute those cases. But again, I was a probationary agent and I was told to do it. So I did what I was told, right? But there is no distinction of justice. Like, justice has nothing to do with the Department of Justice. It's about stats. It's about promotions. It's about the political narrative at the time. And it's just about moving ahead. And, I have a good friend, Jimmy Capra, who's like the deputy director or deputy of operations for the DEA now. 33 years of government service as a DEA agent, and he lives in Texas. Good dude. And he was telling me, he was like, the day I retired, I was just trying to like send an email to help follow up on something I was working on, and I got told not to call back. And it was like, when you're done, you're done. And that's what these agents don't really understand. It's like 33 years of FBI service and ruining innocent lives and blah, blah. And it's like, okay, that's great. And then what? You have to live with yourself.
It's the carousel. My buddy Phil talks about this pretty extensively. He said what people don't realize, and I was in a unique position to see this because the team that I worked on, the surveillance team, they had a lot of agents that would retire off the team. It was their last couple of years in, and then they would go off and play golf or become background investigators, BICs or whatever they're called. And so I got to watch people leave the carousel. And what people think is that I am so integral to the mission of this organization that they will never replace me. And what I watched is nobody even noticed that you got off the carousel when you left. Nobody gave a shit that you were gone, and they never have. Not in the history of the organization, because the institution carries on and you're just on it for the ride. And when you're not on it for the ride, somebody else is in your spot and they think that you're completely replaceable because you are. And if you understand that, it changes the game. It should change the game for loyalty, but those people never actually see the loyalty change until after they leave. And we get 50-50 then. Some people still really need the organization to be something because it helps them in their next life. And some people look back and go, I am absolutely ashamed. I've had FBI agents come up to me since January 6th, have come up to me since the COVID mandates, have come up to me since what happened to me and the guys, and have told me they have moved from the place they retired to. They have moved into a new neighborhood, and they did not tell their neighbors what it was they did before they retired. They make up a lie so they don't have to explain how they worked for the FBI, specifically the FBI, not federal law enforcement in general, that organization. That's wild.
Yeah. I mean,
you're
a cog in a wheel. Man. The machine will continue on without you. Mm-hmm. But God forbid you speak up because the machine is doing something illegal or immoral, and now you find yourself in the trajectory of this war machine. And it's sad, man. And then my buddy Phil, he was telling me that the Bureau of Prisons is like a human trafficking organization, where these privatized prisons they're cycling these people through, and these people are just making money on their feed, on housing them and feeding them. And I really hope Trump just deprivatizes all prisons, makes it a government run prison, so no one's benefiting by the imprisonment of people. So that's another topic for another day. But it's just the system is extremely broken. And I pray that Trump and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are able to fix it.
I want you to think about something. I had another FBI whistleblower on, a guy who had a very different situation than mine, but also stood up, said Constitution is important. Some things that I've seen are wrong. And his name is Zach Shofstall. And Zach said the one thing he remembers is that whenever anybody got sideways with their organization, didn't matter if it was DEA, doesn't matter if it was ATF, doesn't matter if it's FBI, Bureau of Prisons, whatever. If you got sideways with the organization, you were accused of something, the default was you probably deserved it. You probably did something to earn it. And we all think the same way. You hear some guy who's going to get court-martialed, you're like, yeah, that guy probably did some dirtbag stuff. Like, we just assume the default when you are an institutional believer, when you actually work for it, because you got to believe what you do every day.
Yeah.
You would default to the institution is probably right, and that guy probably had it coming. And then you get into a situation like you're in.
Yeah, like double. Like, I was a criminal from the DEA, and all the guys that we'd hit houses together and do raids and have barbecues and live life, because you spend countless hours together, man. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I was a criminal, but then also from a nation. All the J6ers were pariahs. All the J6ers, the entire nation was convinced that J6ers were domestic terrorists to be thrown in Gitmo, and this is the first insurrection of many insurrections, and these people are a threat to our democracy, and they're evil, and the CIA started this main core thing, and they started, Deloitte got a government contract for millions and millions of dollars to monitor and to organize the largest investigation in the history of America, and it was a farce. I mean, you have the videos of Capitol Police guys opening the doors. You have the statements where Nancy Pelosi refused the National Guard. Like now the whistleblower, whatever, they're saying there were 26 informants in that crowd. And I think that number is way higher. And I know of multiple other FBI agents that were there. So it's like they still haven't come out with any FBI agents that were in the crowd. And so it's
a worthwhile point, and I made it right when I saw the Inspector General report that what they said was that there were no UCs.
right, and that's a
brand name.
right. There's a difference between an informant and a source of information, and they classify these little nomenclatures for their bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality of it, there were badge credentialed, like armed federal agents in that crowd, and whether to the extent that they were ensuing violence or instigating violence or whatever, like that's the real tragedy that is just a big psyop. I mean,
my guess
people
is a
talk
lot of
about,
them were
like,
not involved in anything violent. I bet a lot of them were like what your brother was. They were there doing the same thing that you guys were, which was that you were supporting the fact that you have a right to speak.
I want
That's
to
my
talk
guess.
about this for a second. So
Let's do it.
they said that what kind of message is Trump sending by pardoning people who had assault on a police officer? Okay. I was there all day and night, and I did not see anybody assault a police officer, period. Had I seen it, I would have arrested them violently. Okay. And then I have a friend, Luke Coffey, who is getting his ass beat by batons and reaches up to grab a baton to protect his brain as he's being pummeled to death. And he got charged with assault on a police officer with a violent, deadly weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's instinctual to protect your head. He didn't rip the baton out of the police officer's hand. He didn't reuse it on the police officer. He just grabbed it, and he's trying to stop him from getting beat up. But normally there's a checks and balances. Normally there is like some boss at the whatever agency you're at are going to call bullshit on it. Then the grand jury might call bullshit on it, and then the judge, and then the appellate court. Somebody eventually there's like this checks and balances system to just. But everybody was convinced that J6ers were domestic terrorists
and white supremacists, apparently,
and white supremacists, and right, and so Trump did the absolute right thing by pardoning. I mean, were there some bad actors there that were probably informants or working for the FBI? Sure. Do those people deserve to go to prison? Absolutely. But when you weaponize the DOJ like that, Trump did the absolute right thing by blanket pardoning everybody. I didn't know I was going to. I didn't know. No one knew he was going to do a blanket pardon. Well, at least I didn't. And so I was struggling to try to get my name to him. And Trump actually has an ISIS coin of mine. And, I was struggling to get my name to him desperately so I could see my son grow up, right? I'm not trying to get rich. I'm not trying to get famous. I just want to see my beautiful baby boy grow up. I don't want to spend the next 16 years of my life fighting criminals or cartel members to survive. And so when Trump pardoned everybody and the White House, it came out, the paper came out from the White House. I was reading it in my kitchen with some good friends and my mom, and it was just like a sigh of relief, man. It was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. It was just a document that Trump signed, but I really hope that he knows the amount of lives that he saved and that he signed by, and the families he reunited, and the families that he saved from being destroyed by signing that document. So God bless you, President Trump, and thank you for our pardon.
What about those that only got commuted, that spent some time in prison and just
honestly, man, if Trump commuted their sentence, he probably had good reason to do it, man.
This is something that I generally kind of default to the same kind of thought historically, and I'm coming around on this too. I watched. Are you familiar with the story of Joe Biggs?
No.
I talked to Joe Biggs for about 2 hours. He was one of the Proud Boys that got convicted, and they were convicted of seditious conspiracy against the United States. No violence, conspiracy.
Which is the easiest thing to prove.
Conspiracy is always easy, yeah. And you know what? The evidence that was primarily used, the evidence that was shown, was not a standard that said beyond a reasonable doubt that you must be able to prove it, so that no reasonable person would think otherwise. What they said, and this is part of the documentation from the trial, is that a fist bump allowed a telepathic connection between the two guys who were doing the fist bump, that they were now going to engage in an insurrection, that they were now going to engage in this sedition. They were going to take over the country. And they did so by basically, he told me his story, and he's like, I walked in with 2 hot Italian girls, and then I walked back out a few minutes later, and then the cop was standing there, and then I went back in again, and I said, can I use the bathroom? And I used the bathroom, and they showed me where it was.
Yeah.
And that was enough to send him to jail for 18 years.
Well, dude, conspiracy is the easiest thing to prove. If I tell you, hey, dude, I'm gonna go rob a bank, and you give words of affirmation like my love language, you go, good luck. Like you say, good luck. They can get that you conspired to rob a bank too. It's an evil little bureaucratic nomenclature that they use to arrest people. I mean, who would have thought leaving a group chat, which is your constitutional right, because you don't like what somebody's saying on it, is destruction of evidence? I mean, conspiracy to sedition. But again, when everybody's convinced that you are a terrorist and deserve to be in Gitmo, there is no system of checks and balances. You have less rights than terrorists in Gitmo. I mean, there are people fighting for the rights of terrorists that are in Gitmo.
Yeah, no, there are. Well, here's my problem with what I just shared with you, because the story of those guys, and Stuart Rhodes is among them as well. You don't have to like him as a person. You don't have to like what he has to say. You don't have to agree with any of his perspectives. You don't get a chance to say whether or not he served the United States, because he did. And it's the same story for Joe. Joe retired. So you look at those guys, they retired from military service. They honorably separated from military service. They had VA benefits. Joe had 2 Purple Hearts, and they negated it. And so I found out after the fact, and I found out while talking to him, they pulled his VA benefits. So the man got out of prison. He had a retirement from the military. He had VA benefits from the military. He hadn't slept in 3 weeks when he got out of prison. He went over there and said, hey, can I get some medication, or can I talk to a psychiatrist, psychologist who can diagnose what's going on? I haven't slept in 3 weeks. Obviously, the anxiety of leaving prison was probably pretty high and going cold turkey back out into the world. Yeah. Usually they do a halfway house. And so part of the empathy that I'm kind of growing on is, it's like, imagine one of your brothers who went through something in the military, Purple Heart, blown up, record, documented injuries, etc., and they pull the benefits. They act like the thing that happened beforehand, which had nothing to do with one day for maybe 30 minutes of time on the ground, negates the entirety of their life before for decades. That to me is it's unconscionable for this country to have done, and they did it without even thinking about it.
Ashley Babbitt was stripped of all military honors.
Right.
There's a guy, Jeremy Brown, who is
Jeremy Brown's
20-year SF veteran who was pardoned fully. But when they were doing a raid related to J6, they found like some inert hand grenades in his house or something like that. And now he's charged with having a hand grenade, and he's still in prison. I mean, I wish Trump would really set up like a hotline or like somebody to kind of could just right a bunch of injustices that have been done previously. And I mean, I do have a suit against the DEA. I don't have it actively, but there's a malicious prosecution suit. That was another motion that I filed, stating that my brother was there. He's a credentialed agent. He had his badge and gun on him. He was on Capitol grounds, just like me. We did not trespass. We didn't violate anything. We were together, and my brother didn't get a plea deal. My brother didn't get reprimanded. He's just okay.
And what happened to him? What was the story?
He's still an agent to this day. He's moving back to D.C. like nothing.
He's assigned to the Washington field office, or
I don't know. He's moving back to D.C., man. I have no idea. He's got a supervisory role now. So and it's like,
how much has he spoken to you in the last, let's say, 2 years?
I'd stopped talking to him, man, because I asked him. I was like, Mike, there were some motions where I was like, I wasn't the only federal agent there. I put motions to this judge with Marina Medvin, my really great, smart attorney, basically stating that I wasn't the only federal agent there, that and that had his badge and gun, and my brother was there, and he was texting other agents, and there were people in the crowd, and my brother was like, you got yourself into this, you got to get yourself out of this. And I was like, okay, man, sure. So I hadn't talked to my brother for 3 years, and but again, that's like your typical FBI type guy. Is he malicious? No. Did he turn me in? Was he trying to get me arrested? I don't think so. But it's just like, you're not messing up my FBI career, which is my identity and my livelihood. And it's like, you are my blood brother, but you handle yourself. And so it's fine. I mean, it is what it is. And, it's a very freeing thing to rid your life of people who are not your true friends. Like to clean your house of people who are just there that are users, or people are there that are just there. I mean, through this, I lost like my blood brother, I guess. You know, I don't really, I'm indifferent to him. Like God tells me to forgive, so I forgive him. I have no hatred towards him, but I really don't care how he lives his life or whatever. But I've gained real brothers in Christ, brothers in arms, patriots. I've met so many cool people through this situation. Chuck Liddell, dude, I'll tell you a story about Chuck Liddell.
Tell me.
I met Chuck Liddell at church, right? And he was going through a divorce, and he's like, take my number down, man. And I was like, I don't have my cell phone on me. I'm not a fanboy or whatever. He's like, he took my number down. He was texting me. We became really good friends. And at the last America Fest in Phoenix, because again, this is before I was pardoned, I didn't know that Trump was going to do a blanket pardon. I thought I had to get my name to Trump to get on a pardon list. So I called Chuck, and I'm like, Chuck, I need you to come help me. Like, listen, I'm not about using people or clout or any of this, but when it comes to watching my son grow up and him being raised by another man while I'm in prison fighting for my life, I'll call in all the favors. There's no pride here. I will be whatever I need to do to see my son grow up.
That's the big game.
So I called Chuck, and I was like, hey, dude, can you come to America Fest, and can you just try to help network for me to get my name to Trump some way, somehow? And he's like, Mark, I got my kids that weekend. And I was like, Chuck, this means a lot to me. He's like, don't say any more. I'm there. So Chuck flew to Phoenix from California, and he set up a meeting with Ted Cruz and a bunch of other people. Like, he was he was hustling for me. And that's why he made my problem his problem. Mm-hmm. Chuck knows my son, and Chuck knew that he wanted my son to have a father. So he joined in, even though he's a celebrity and a millionaire and a great guy, and he risked his fame, his fortune, his reputation just to help a lowly person like that. Like, Chuck should run for office, man. Really, he really should. Like, that's what we need from our politicians. I'm not going to put any names out there because I don't want to sow any division, but there are some very conservative, outspoken people, politicians about J6 that I personally met, and they would not give me the time of day or look in my direction. And I was pleading with them. I was like, I was a federal agent. I did nothing wrong that day. I offered assistance. I have a son. I don't want to go to jail. Is there anything else you could do for me, please? And they wouldn't even look at me. They're just kept walking. And I would just, it's fine. Like, I mean, I don't want to sow division, and I don't want to call anybody out. I don't really gain anything by that. But I mean, it's the real brothers like Chuck Liddell and you and New York Mike, who's got a podcast called Rolling with Mike. He's like 83-year-old air combat controller from Vietnam. I met him at a cigar lounge. I was just like smoking and drinking and all depressed and everything. He's like, what's going on, man? And I told him my story. He's like, that's bullshit. Because, and he's like, I'm going to help you. And I was like, okay. And he owned the largest Harley Davidson dealership in America. He owned like 3 Harley Davidson dealerships in San Diego. He's just an American hero, patriot, great guy. He got me to election night. He got me tickets to election night. And then we went to America Fest together. And he was actually in my mother's kitchen when I found out I was unpardoned. He came with me to Inauguration. Whoa. This dude's 83, and we'd be partying with Chuck Liddell till 3 a.m, doing shots of tequila, and he'd be with us hanging out. And I was like, dude, these are my brothers now, man. These are the American patriots who came by my side and loved me through this, encouraged me, told me to stop whining, So I'm thankful, because there are a lot of dudes that didn't have that. And there's a random note of encouragement. Like, when I came back from Iraq, I was like depressed and whatever. And I was like, do I miss war? What's going on? Like, I don't understand why I'm not feeling so hot right now. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't I missed war. It was the camaraderie and the fellowship and the brotherhood that, like, when you woke up, you had a guy there. When you're taking a crap, you had a guy there. When you eat, and you had a guy there. You get in a firefight, you had a guy there. And then you come back home, and it's just you and a bottle of Jack Daniels. And it's like, and so I would encourage that military veterans, just anybody who's hurting, like, get a good fire team, get a brotherhood around you. Like, there is a brotherhood. It is real. It may not be the SEALs or special operations or the FBI or FLEOA or whatever. I reached out to FLEOA, and they're like, don't ever call me again. Click. Yeah. I was like, I need help. I'm a member. They're like, not today, you are. Click. I would just encourage you to get a tight group of guys that you have genuine concern for each other, and get your fire team, because they'll get you through dark times, man. Like, that's just another some wisdom that I learned through these dark times.
Yeah, my buddy Peter Johnson, who I had on the program the other day, he says he calls it a MAG. He says the mutual assistance group. It's the group of people that are mutually aligned. They don't agree with everything you need. They don't say everything that you say. They don't hold all the same thoughts. They don't finish your sentences when you're done. But when the chips are down, their skill set augments whatever difficulties are in your life. So, maybe he said his advice was go find a welder. If you don't know how to weld, find a friend who's a welder. Like, fill in your gaps of weakness with someone who does. Mine is, interestingly enough, like my wife. I'm a communicator, obviously, but not full of empathy. In fact, the one thing that my dad used to tell me when I was growing up, he's like, you need to learn empathy. And I was like, why? Like, I don't really care.
You make a great FBI agent.
Well, it turns out you can be stone faced and not care, and it's almost sociopathic to be able to turn that thing off. And so the woman I ended up marrying is incredibly empathic to the point where it's dangerous for her sometimes. So the two of us have this thing. I help her kind of harden her shell up, and she helps soften mine up. And these are important things. If you can't find people that help you be better people, then you got to cast them out. But if you do, you got to gather those people to you. And they'll only the ones that'll be there when things go wrong. How many of the guys that you worked with in the DEA called you up?
Dude, zero. Actually, one guy that's in the Hawaii office. Really good dude. I had a bar restaurant in DC that was shut down because of COVID, but I had it while I was an agent. And so I'd bring all the agents out of my class there, and we'd drink and have a good time. We spent New Year's there. And one guy, his name's Gabe. I'm not going to give his last name, but Gabe is he goes, Mark, this is just a job, dude. He understands. Like, this is just a job. Like, you are a friend, and I know your character. I know who you are. But I would say, even if you need a welder, don't find a welder. I just find someone who has genuine concern for you, man.
It's the same idea.
Like, I'm trying to help a friend.
It just turns out you'll find somebody who if you're going to need a welder, and you're going to find someone who's a welder, but you're not going to choose them because they're a welder. You're going to choose them because they're a person that vibed with you. And God's going to put them in your path, and you're going to end up having someone that can solve your problems. And I think we all kind of see that, but only when you really give up. I mean, I think that's the other big thing. I've been talking to Steve Friend about this a lot, and it's hard because if you're an aggressive alpha type male, if you're used to driving and solving and accomplishing, and then the only answer is to surrender completely, which is the example that Christ puts out in the world. This is the revolutionary nature of Jesus' time on earth. He flipped the paradigm. He out-alphaed everybody by giving up, but not giving up like in a way that was losing. He lost and won, knowing what the outcome's going to be. That's such a hard thing for men to grasp. It's why I think it's such a challenge. You have to go and say, the ultimate victory is surrender. And there's a reason why we have all these kind of things in parable form, right? We've got Obi-Wan Kenobi getting struck down, becoming more powerful than you can imagine. There's a lot of examples of people who have sacrificed themselves to be able to win. And it looks like losing to the world. And for me, anyway, it's one of the hardest challenges is try to ingest that.
Well, there's a story of like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they were like, they said, our God can save us from the fire, but even if he doesn't, we're not going to bend the knee to your idol.
That's right.
And there's it's a dichotomy of strength, trust, faith, surrender. God doesn't equip. He doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. And the Bible is filled with people who weren't fit or able to, like David and Goliath, or the story of Judith, or like people who weren't able to do these things. Like Moses had a stutter, and was a shepherd. And so there's this, but when you believe in God and you believe in his ultimate power and his goodness and his ability to deliver, that's when we become truthfully strong. That's when surrendering to him, I'll bend my knee to him and no one else. I was, it's crazy, dude. I've got stories for days about the FBI, man. I was dating this chick named Becca. She was on the FBI dive team, and she was part of the FBI agents that were forced to take a kneel outside the archives. And they were throwing bottles at her and threatening her, and her group leader, or ASAC, I don't even know what you guys call him, but her boss took a knee first, and then everyone's screaming, take a knee, take a knee. And she called me later that day. I was like, did you take a knee? And she was like, yeah, Mark, you weren't there. You don't understand. They were threatening us with violence. It's like, so you're kitted out. And there's like a photo of it out there. Like she's
lots
out
of
there.
photos.
Like you're in body armor. You're armed. You're this. Like, if you want to take a knee for solidarity, for whatever you feel like taking a knee is for your black brothers and sisters, that's fine. But if you're going to take a knee under the threat of violence, it's a different story, okay? If you want to take a knee to make a political statement and show your solidarity with black people, that's up to you. That's your choice. It's
Probably a
up to
Hatch
you.
Act violation,
But you
sure.
put a gun to my head, or you start throwing. Yeah. Well, by the way, the Agents Association gave all of them a $100 gift card.
I know.
And then they're like, "Oh, we can't really do this. Can you give them back to us?" It's like these are the untold stories of the FBI. They don't understand how jacked up the FBI was.
Do you want to hear something really crazy? Because I found this out just now, before you got here. Do you know the really heavy-set lady? Her name is Sarah Linden. In that picture, she's the only one that looks like she ate another FBI agent. She's big. She's like the face of NEAL Team 6, right? She's a very big gal. She got promoted from SSA to ASAC. And she is apparently, as of right now, the assistant director of counterintelligence for the Bureau.
Well, there you go. There you have it. But
hey, compliance pays in the federal government. And there's no greater example than someone who is, let's call
honestly,
it,
dude, I wouldn't put it past her.
She's 60% heavier than she should be.
I wouldn't put her past her to open a case on us for this conversation right now.
I hope she does.
No, I mean, really, like,
I hope she does.
I was outside the DC Gulag after, on
Come
Inauguration.
at me, Sarah. Come at me. Hold on, let me just say, Come at me. You chunky monkey. I fear not. I fear not fat FBI agents at this point. Not in my life. But
I honestly do. I'll tell you a quick story. I was outside the DC Gulag on Inauguration Day, and I saw the MPD officers start cordoning off the area, and we saw a bunch of people with cameras and agent-looking dudes in their cars, and I was like, honestly, I was scared, but I was like, a new day has dawned. Like, the FBI lost its teeth. And even then, it wasn't that the FBI lost its teeth. There was a shift in me. I didn't really speak up. I know FBI agents' names that were in the crowd. I know the informants, J6er, Higley. Like, I thought that if I just didn't speak up too much, they'd let me off with a light beating. Surely they don't think I'm a domestic terrorist, right? And then when they came after me with everything that I had, and the reason why I couldn't even talk is because there was a gag order on my discovery, and they tried to arrest me after I made a Tucker Carlson Patriot Purge. I was shooting in the video, and it was filmed pre-indictment. And then the marshals came after me for a post-indictment. They were like, "You broke bail. You possessed a weapon." And luckily, the Fox News producer picked up his phone and sent a letter to my attorney, and my attorney sent it to the prosecutors. They were hungry after me, man.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God they all got fired. You know what I mean? They were evil. They were in the wrong. Listen, if I went in the building or if I hurt somebody, I would say, fry me. I messed up. I wasn't thinking straight. Please fry me. I have a lifelong history of doing what's right and serving my nation. If I messed up, I would admit that I messed up, take my licks like a man, and be like, whatever comes, I messed up.
Yeah.
I didn't. Never stepped foot in that building. Never hurt anybody. Never unholstered my pistol. Never did anything. And offered assistance to the FBI. A good guy, you know? And they came after me. So it's silence, you know, compliance doesn't mean... I never thought I would be a political prisoner in my own country. Ever.
Yeah, nobody can fathom it.
Right. Especially having served my nation. Having carried a gun for the majority of my adult life.
And that's what it comes down to for most of the folks that are there. It's been such a 180-degree reversal on their belief in the institutions.
Yeah.
That the default position is the USA is the good guy. And here's the crazy thing. How many people are cheering for Doge? How many people are just thrilled? They're like, gut this ugly animal that has been coming after people. It has abused its authorities. It's abused its position in the world. And we just don't buy your bullshit anymore. We just don't.
Amen.
Like, as a default now, we assume you're the bad guy until proven otherwise, which, by the way, a lot of us who are kind of in the libertarian bend, like I'm Christian more importantly than libertarian, because I don't think libertarianism is a complete philosophy. But politically, I'm kind of a live and let live guy. You know, I stay out of the way. And I never trusted government. I didn't trust government when I worked there. The funniest joke was people would ask. I have actually a buddy who's still working for the Bureau. We were talking the other night. And I said, if our Quantico class got together and signed and looked at the two of us, and they were like, is it going to be Seraphin or C? Who's going to be the first one that's going to get kicked out of the Bureau? 100 out of 100 of them would have chosen C. 100 of them. No doubt. We were both cracking up about it. And I go, what are the odds? And he was like, it was just the right amount of circumstances. They pushed your nuzzle. I said, the funniest thing is, if they had asked the two of us, we would have agreed it was you, but I would have been right after you. Because what they didn't realize was that I've always been like this. And I never thought the government was the right answer. So I maybe was less jaded than some folks who really did believe it all the way.
I was a true believer, man.
I know
was absolutely
that's
a true
the biggest
believer.
Betrayal.
Yeah, it is a huge betrayal. I was risking my life in Iraq and Kurdistan and Syria. I was blown up, being shot at, and like giving information to the legal attaché in Erbil, and I'd get debriefed by FBI CT agents out here in Manassas, Virginia. And
just think about how
doing
many
a bunch of stuff, man. But like,
stud
I was a true
operators.
believer that our government would never lie to us.
Yeah, no, but think about
our
it.
government would never harm us. They had our best interest, and then here I am in the DC gulag, facing 16 years, and a judge is comparing me to a psychopath with a hand grenade.
Right. Which is how you get guys like Robert O'Neill, or take your pick of like fill in the blank. How about Mike Glover? Like dudes who are studs who went out and did the mission. And not everybody loves everybody in the teams and the different ODAs. That's not always the case. Everybody's got a reputation. But people who did the mission, who went out there in good faith and prosecuted it and did it the hard way, right? And then they come back here and now they're all going like, man, was I just killing people for politicians? And for somebody's stock prices to go up at Raytheon or Boeing or General Electric? I just put a tweet out and it was about, isn't it disgusting to see Pete Hegseth out there PTing with the troops in Germany? Like, God forbid how is he going to be able to help the Raytheon boardrooms make more money if he's out there just trying to show some, he's a civilian, for God's sake, God
bless Pete Hegseth.
Yeah,
if you need any help at the Pentagon, call me, dog.
We're seeing a reversal though of people who are now like, it's almost like a teenage punk rock moment. I grew up in like the people who were against the authority, like they were the damn the man, save the empire, right? We wanted small government. We wanted small companies to thrive. We wanted the big stuff. And then you get a little older and you're like, no. There's a position for the government. The government's got to keep the peace. It's got to do those things. And then you get a little bit older and you're like, nah, they've abused that authority. Like, screw them. Like, I want to see it all bleed. I want to see Doge come in with a 19-year-old kid named Harry Balls cutting the nuts off all of these bloated federal bureaucracies. And so the energy has changed in this country. And Donald Trump's pardon of J6ers was a piece of it. And honestly, it's the close. I mean, I think it's the eye of the hurricane. Interestingly enough,
think
was
we
before
as Americans
and after that pardon.
And conservatives, we forget way too quickly. They tried to kill Trump twice
In July of last year. It
Yes.
hasn't even been a year.
They indicted him. They told him to sit down while they went through Melania's underwear drawer.
Mhm.
They raided his house.
Mm-hmm.
They made anything and everything. The most scrutinized man in the history of America. And they couldn't find anything on him. They had to go back for something past the statute of limitations.
That's right.
And I love Trump because he never gave up. Like, God bless you, brother. Like, you never gave up. You never gave up the fight. And because of it, you never giving up and saying, F this, I'm done with this. You saved the republic. And
I would have called that hyperbole previously, but I don't anymore. And it's an interesting moment. I'm glad you never gave in. I'm glad for all the people that never took a plea, that were ready to go to face trial, knowing it was unjust. I told people, I think my first podcast with Dan Bongino, I said one of my proudest moments in my life. I'm proud of being a dad. I'm proud of being married. I like those things. But like one of the proudest moments, certainly in my professional life, was that the FBI found that I was unworthy of their organization before they went and raided Mar-a-Lago.
yeah.
I really am grateful that they threw me out before then.
The logistical tactical nightmare of doing the handoff between Secret Service and the FBI, and
That's
they didn't
why they
care.
brought in HRT.
And then they said they brought in HRT. I didn't know that.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
authorized deadly force. I'm surprised one of the corrupt agents didn't kill Trump while they were searching Mar-a-Lago, man.
He wasn't there. That was the whole thing. So some of this stuff got blown out of proportion, and it's been problematic. And again, this is for people who don't understand. They specifically coordinated with Secret Service. You can read the op order, and you probably haven't. It's more of an obsession of mine because it's my old agency. But they looked up. They found out when he was traveling. They had a liaison contact. They had an ability to deconflict with Secret Service. They sent people in. The deadly force policy has to be on every single op order. Do you know that? It cannot not be on there. Do you know why?
Because if they kill somebody, they go to jail.
Because of Ruby Ridge.
Oh,
It's been on there since Ruby Ridge. Which, by the way, people reached out to me and told me about Ruby Ridge, and I have more empathy for the FBI sniper that took the shot. Not that he missed. That's not good, obviously. But the shot probably was justified based under the rules of engagement they were operating under, which is why it's now on every single FD 888. The operations order tells you what has to happen. But the reason that they supposedly shot at Randy Weaver, it is a good shoot if you were already there. And I don't think they should have been there in the first place because I don't agree with the warrant. And the same problem with like Donald Trump's people. You know, they went to go search Mar-a-Lago. I don't think they should have ever been there. I think that was a travesty. I think we could probably agree on that. It's absurd. But once they're there, they're going to do search warrant stuff. They are going to search drawers. They are going to go through stuff. So the minute you already agree to that, you drop that quarter in, they're going to take the ride. The reason they shot at Randy Weaver is supposedly it looked like he was raising his weapon towards a helicopter, their aerial platform that was above, which would in fact be a deadly force engagement. Problem is that, you know, there was a miss and it killed a child and his wife. So all of that is terrific, terrifically bad. It's like the most horrific moment you could have is that you're not only are you like you're authorized to, but you missed and you killed bystanders. So all of that is terrible.
And it's praised as like they award their failures. It's praised as like a great operation in the FBI.
I guarantee you I guarantee you people were like proud of the fact that they finished and that there was no bloodshed and they did a great job of the tactical clear of Mar-a-Lago because there's no other way to do it. It's like, how else do you go and tell your friends, like, I did this thing, unless you say, I did it really well. I did my job really well. But your job was unethical.
And there wasn't a single agent that spoke up as a part of that
we
whole
We don't know
thing.
that yet. And that's what I think that's what's going to be interesting about Patel getting in. Because I have such a hard time believing that.
No, I think it would have made news. It would have made national news.
No, they wouldn't speak out publicly. I want to know if anybody objected in the team room that said, I'm not going to go, I'm sitting this one out, boss. How many people did that? Because there's a possibility that happened. And if they did, I hope that person is raised up. What we learned from the Holocaust, you brought up Nazis earlier. So let's just kind of dig into it just briefly before we kind of shut this thing down. But during the Holocaust, there's a whole book. It's called Ordinary Men. It's about men following orders. They were Reserve Police Battalion 101. And so Garrett O'Boyle and I talk about this all the time. They were given orders that were illegal, immoral, unethical, things that should not have been followed. And everybody did. But there's a few people that objected to it. They said, look, I can't do that. Not in good conscience. I can't go out there and round up the Jews. I can't go out there and take these children. I can't go out there and put them on a boxcar. I can't execute old people because they're slow. You know what happened to those guys? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing happened when they spoke up and said, I'm not going to participate. So the historical experiment has already been done. That when people objected to orders that were unlawful or immoral, unconstitutional, maybe you lose your job.
Yeah.
But
you're destroying other lives.
But they came after me. They didn't go after Steve Friend for objecting to using a SWAT team. And I find that interesting because in the order of things, they were more upset about me exposing things than they were about a guy who said, look, I'm sitting this one out. That's not right. And so I respect the hell out of the fact that he did that. No question. But it's also useful to know that there was no subpoena for his records over that. So again and again, history rewards us with this like knowledge that you can object to something that's wrong, and generally speaking, nothing happens to you. And how do more people not do it?
I would encourage Americans, and I got a video for you that I want you to play at the end of this, if that's cool.
Sure.
I would encourage Americans to not just quietly object. I would encourage Americans that if you see something wrong, that you would take a stand against it. And it doesn't matter if you're an FBI agent, DEA agent, if you a pastor, or if you have a Italian restaurant in the memory of your mother. When they come for your rights and your freedoms, they can never be taken. They can only be surrendered. Right? That's something Americans really need to understand. You are citizens of the greatest country that ever existed, and that you have God-given, constitutionally protected rights, and you need to stand firm in those rights and stand firm in your God and stand firm in who you are. And if you don't believe in God, stand firm in that you're not going to let yourself be abused. We needed more people to speak up. And until we have more heroes than cowards in this nation, we are quickly going to find ourselves back there. I mean, I keep saying this, we're in a high-speed wobble right now. Like, what happens if Governor Newsom gets elected in 4 years? What is he going to weaponize the DOJ like? What's that going to look like? You'll probably be arrested. You're going to have HRT kicking in your door, and they probably won't. They'll be like, they probably won't care to put handcuffs on you, right? So that's what I'm saying. I need Americans and patriots need to stand up. Christians need to stand up, and we need to stand in truth and for constitutional rights and for what our country was founded upon. So we never go back to where we were, because right now we're winning and Doge and Elon Musk and everything's really great. And I'm excited about all of it. But what happens 4 years from now?
No, it's got to be locked in. And you're
right.
Exactly
And so
right.
if Trump goes full bore for 4 years and then JD Vance for 8 or another something, I'm praying that like 12 years of just bringing America back to its patriotic constitutional roots, we may swing back left, but never back to where we were.
Yeah, that's
and
yeah, or else what was any of this about?
Yeah, the greatest experiment in democracy and self-government.
Yeah, and then vote away all of your own civil liberties, which is what we keep seeing. It's the strangest thing in the world to watch people who claim to be quote unquote liberals. I would call them leftists, but to see people who claim to be one thing vote away liberty. It's not like, oh, I don't want to exercise that liberty. They're like, you shouldn't have that liberty either.
Are you familiar with Yuri Bezmenov?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just go watch Yuri Bezmenov's interview on YouTube.
It's totally self-demoralized. It's it's active measures. We've had Mike
ideological subversion,
mm-hmm.
and it's been working until recently, thanks to the hard efforts of Charlie Kirk and his grassroots program and podcasters like you and Bryce Eddy, and a lot of people who are not afraid to speak up for the truth. Pastor Rob McCoy. I mean, Pastor Rob, he says, I have the ability of preaching a church down to a manageable size. And then when he stood firm in the truth, his church exploded. Because also was the only church that was open. But, I mean, people like that. And then when they were going to arrest churchgoers at Pastor Rob's church, there's another church, Tim Phillips Church in Riverside or Temecula, somewhere like that. And his churchgoers, his parishioners, were going to Pastor Rob's church to get arrested because it'd be an honor to be arrested for, believing, which is also your, congregating to
Amen.
Worship, which is also your constitutional right. There are so many untold stories of this attack on our civil liberties, on our rights, our constitutional rights.
And it happened everywhere. It wasn't just like a California thing. I mean, it happened in Idaho. I met some guys from Moscow, Idaho, who had the same thing happen. And that you'd think that Idaho would be like the cutting edge of don't tread on me and get off my lawn. But that was not the case. There were cops out there saying, if you're not properly distanced, if you sing hymns outdoors in a flipping parking lot, we're going to take your freedom. And so, yeah, we did see that. We do have a buy. We got a little bit of a brief reprieve in this firefight for whatever it is we're fighting for. And I think we get another little shot at that. And I hope we don't miss, I really don't, because I don't want to see you go to prison. I don't want to see me go to prison. I don't want my kids growing up without a dad. But I think they all kind of realize, some people understand the stakes now.
I'm not afraid anymore. I used to be so afraid of going to prison, really. And I realized, I'm not letting fear dictate my life anymore. Especially this fear of these cowardice, chunky monkeys sit behind their desk.
Come at me,
barely, they have to carry their pistol outside the waistband. I'm not afraid anymore, man. I don't care. Come after me. Truthfully, come after me. I know God and the truth are on my side.
Mm-hmm.
And come whatever happens, happens. And I don't mean that as a threat, whatever way the left is going to twist this story or whatever. I refuse to live in fear anymore.
That's it.
Because their playbook and their hand has been exposed, and they overplayed their hand, and America has rejected them. I mean, Trump got the majority vote. Trump, a convicted felon, won the majority vote after they tried to kill him twice. We must never forget this, right? And so they were like, oh, Doge, and he's cutting USAID and blah, 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 and he's a bigot. It's like, you guys tried to kill him twice, right? He's a convicted felon. You raided his home. And he still won. As
my buddy George Hill likes to say, payback is a medevac. And that's what's going on right now in this country. Hopefully it continues. Anyhow, let's keep it up. What's our people? Can they follow you on social media now? Honestly, your life is weird.
I have no social media. I don't want any of this clout. I mean, I have a Give, Send, Go to cover my attorney fees. So, and I just want to cover my attorney fees. Anything above my attorney fees that's raised, I'm going to give to the families of destitute J6ers. They locked up the sole provider for their family, sole protector and provider for their family for months. So I'm going to try to bless those families if I raise anything above my attorney fees. And you can hold me accountable for that. So yeah, I have a Give, Send, Go called Mark's Liberty Fund. I got deplatformed from GoFundMe.
Surprising.
But yeah, I mean, I just, I'm living a quiet life, trying to raise my kid and be able to provide for my family. Looking for work. I really hope that the DEA administrator reinstates me, obviously, for this injustice, and I can continue serving my nation. I would love to go to work for cash or go to work for the current, the administrator, or just, I don't know, but we'll see what happens. I mean,
God does some interesting things with men who are willing, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, put that hat back on. Let people see it real quick. We'll shut this thing down here. There it is.
There you go, buddy.
Mark, thanks for joining me today. There, now, see, you should have been doing that. You look way more mysterious right now. It's fantastic. Thanks for stopping in. We don't do a lot of in-the-person things, but you were in the neighborhood, so I'm glad you stopped in, and it's good to be able to do it in the same room.
Thank you for having me, and God bless you and your family, brother. Keep up the fight.
Will do, buddy. All right. All right, and that is it for us today on this Sunday sit-down with my friend, Mark Ibrahim. It's tough to hear these stories, and they're going to keep on keeping on. Keep them in your prayers, folks. We appreciate that you do. Also, remember, today's program was brought to you by our friends over at MyPatriot Supply. If you're feeling like things are going well, this is always the best time to stock up. It really is. The minute you start thinking you got your handle on things, if you're feeling like Trump 2.0 is making you feel like wins all over the place, that's usually when we get humbled. Just a quick reminder, preparelikekyle.com, preparelikekyle.com. It's like an insurance policy. This is a buy once, cry once situation. Do one for every adult in your household when you can afford it, working into your budget. Right now, you're going to save $100 on the 3-month emergency food kit, and it's at preparelikekyle.com. It's the main thing you're going to find on the website. When you go there, it's very easy. They're going to guide you right through it. You can watch some videos if you want to learn more about the product, and we're appreciative that they sponsor today's Sunday Sit Down. That's how this stuff gets done. So we have these great sponsors that jump in and underwrite us, and MyPatriot Supply decided to jump in for the whole year. So we're really grateful that they've decided to be part of this and what we're doing here. That's it for us today. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. I hope you've had a great week. If you're listening afterwards, don't forget to support and follow us on all the places where you can find us. And let me just run through them for you. Rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin for the best chat on the internet. Make sure you've liked this video. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel. If you want to find it, you can also stream it on X. It goes out live on X at Kyle Seraphin. And the Locals program, you'll get it a day early. You'll get it on Saturdays instead of Sundays with no ads. If you're watching it after the fact and you don't like pop-up ads and you only want to hear the ads I got to read, go to Spotify. It's very easy to do over there. And the cheat code is you can go to KyleSeraphinShow.com. It'll bring up Spotify. It's a free app. It's a free download, and there's nothing in there that's going to cost you anything. There's no subscription fees or anything like that. So if you guys want to get that done, it's probably easier than Apple. All the kids are doing it, apparently. I'm starting to move all of my stuff over towards Spotify, and we're grateful that they host us. So have a great day. Look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow morning, and God bless you.
Thank you for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.